Hello, this is Morel Bernard with the continuation of the story, Secret Adversary. And last words were that is, so long as they don't know that we've got Jane Finn and that her memory has returned, we must keep that dark at all cost. You understand? Okay, so let me proceed from there. And by the way, please subscribe to Study Coach UK channel. Please subscribe and please share. Thank you. The other two assented, and after making arrangements for meeting on the morrow, the great lawyer took his leave. At 10 o'clock, the two young men were at the appointed spot. Sir James had joined them on the doorstep. He alone appeared, unexcited. He introduced them to the doctor. Mr. Ershmeyer, Mr. Bereford, Dr. Rowlands. How's the patient? Going on well? Evidently no idea of the flight of time. Asked this morning how many had been saved from the Lusitania. Was it in the papers yet? That, of course, was only what was to be expected. She seems to have something on her mind, though. I think we can relieve her anxiety. May we go up? Certainly. Tommy's heart beat sensibly fast as they followed the doctor upstairs. Jane Finn, at last. The long-sought, the mysterious, the elusive Jane Finn. How wildly improbable success had seemed. And here in this house, her memory almost miraculously restored, lay the girl who held the future of England in her hands. A half-groan broke from Tommy's lips. If only Tuppence could have been at his side to share in the triumphant conclusion of their joint venture. Then he put the thought of Tuppence resolutely aside. His confidence in Sir James was growing. There was a man who would unerringly ferret out Tuppence's whereabouts. In the meantime, Jane Finn. And suddenly a dread clutched at his heart. It seemed too easy. Suppose they should find her dead, stricken down by the hand of Mr. Brown. In another minute, he was laughing at these melodramatic fancies. The doctor held open the door of a room and they passed in. On the white bed, bandages round her head, lay the girl. Somehow the whole scene seemed unreal. It was so exactly what one expected that it gave the effect of being beautifully staged. The girl looked from one to the other of them with large, wondering eyes. Sir James spoke first. Miss Finn, he said, this is your cousin, Mr. Julius P. Hershmeyer. A faint flush flitted over the girl's face as Julius stepped forward and took her hand. How do you do, Cousin Jane? He said lightly. But Tommy caught the tremor in his voice. Are you really Uncle Hiram's son? She asked wonderingly. Her voice, with a slight warmth of the Western accent, had an almost thrilling quality. It seemed vaguely familiar to Tommy, but he thrust the impression aside as impossible. Sure thing. We used to read about Uncle Hiram in the papers, continued the girl in her low, soft tones. But I never thought I'd meet you one day. Mother figured it out that Uncle Hiram would never get over being mad with her. The old man was like that, admitted Julius. But I guess the new generations are sort of different. Got no use for the family feud business. First thing I thought about, soon as the war was over, was to come along and hunt you up. A shadow passed over the girl's face. They've been telling me things, dreadful things, that my memory went, and that there are years I shall never know about, years lost out of my life. You didn't realize that yourself? The girl's eyes opened wide. Why, no. It seems to me as though it were no time since we were being hustled into those boats. I can see it all now. She closed her eyes with a shudder. Julius looked across at Sir James, who nodded. Don't worry any. It isn't worth it. Now see here, Jane. There's something we want to know about. There was a man aboard that boat with some mighty important papers on him. And the big guns in this country have got a notion that he passed on the goods to you. Is that so? The girl hesitated, her glance shifting to the other two. Julius understood. Mr. Beresford is commissioned by the British government to get those papers back. Sir James Peel Egerton is an English member of Parliament and might be a big gun in the cabinet if he liked. It's owing to him that we ferreted you out at last. So you can go right ahead and tell us the whole story. Did Danvers give you the papers? Yes. He said they'd have a better chance with me because they would save the women and children first. Oh, just as we thought, said Sir James. He said they were very important, that they might all make the difference to the Allies. But if it's all so long ago and the war's over, what does it matter now? I guess history repeats itself, Jane. First there was a great hue and cry over those papers. Then it all died down, and now the whole caboodle started all over again, for rather different reasons. Then you can hand them over to us right away. But I can't. What? I haven't got them. You haven't got them? Julius punctuated the words with little pauses. No, I hid them. You hid them? Yes. I got uneasy. People seemed to be watching me. It scared me badly. She put her hand to her head. It's almost the last thing I remember before waking up in the hospital. Go on, said Sir James in his quiet, penetrating tones. What do you remember? She turned to him obediently. It was at Holyhead. I came that way. I don't remember why. That doesn't matter. Go on. In the confusion on the quay, I slipped away. Nobody saw me. I took a car, told the man to drive me out of the town. I watched when we got on the open road. No other car was following us. I saw a path on the side of the road. I told the man to wait. She paused, then went on. The path led to the cliff and down to the sea between big yellow gorse bushes. They were like golden flames. I looked round. There wasn't a soul in sight, but just level with my head there was a hole in the rock. It was quite small. I could only just get my hand in it, but it went a long way back. I took the oilskin packet from round my neck and shoved it right in as far as I could. Then I tore off a bit of gorse, but it did prick, and plug the hole with it so that You'd never guess there was a crevice of any kind there. Then I marked the place carefully in my own mind so that I'd find it again. There was a queer boulder in the path just there, for all the world like a dog sitting up begging. Then I went back to the road. The car was waiting and I drove back. I just caught the train. I was a bit ashamed of myself for fancying things maybe, but by and by I saw the man opposite me wink at a woman who was sitting next to me, and I felt scared again and was glad the papers were safe. I went out in the corridor to get a little air. I thought I'd slip into another carriage, but the woman called me back, said I'd dropped something, and then I stopped to look. Something seemed to hit me. Here. She placed her hand to the back of her head. I don't remember anything more until I woke up in the hospital. There was a pause. Thank you, Miss Finn. It was Sir James who spoke. I hope we have not tired you. Oh, that's all right. My head aches a little, but otherwise I feel fine. Julius stepped forward and took her hand again. So long, Cousin Jane. I'm going to get busy after those papers, but I'll be back in 2 shakes of a dog's tail, and I'll tote you up to London, give you the time of your young life before we go back to the States. I mean it, so hurry up and get well. In the street, they held an informal council of war. Sir James had drawn a watch from his pocket. The boat train to Holyhead stops at Chester at 12:14. If you start at once, I think you can catch the connection. Tommy looked up puzzled. Is there any need to hurry, sir? Today's only the 24th. I guess it's always well to get up early in the morning, said Julius, before the lawyer had time to reply. We'll make tracks for the depot right away. A little frown had settled on Sir James's brow. I wish I could come with you. I'm due to speak at a meeting at 2:00. It is unfortunate. The reluctance in his tone was very evident. It was clear, on the other hand, that Julius was easily disposed to put up with the loss of the other's company. I guess there's nothing complicated about this deal, he remarked. Just a game of hide and seek, that's all. I hope so, said Sir James. Sure thing. What else could it be? You are still young, Mr. Hershmeyer. At my age, you will probably have learned one lesson. Never underestimate your adversary. The gravity of his tone impressed Tommy, but had little effect upon Julius. You think Mr. Brown might come along and take a hand? If he does, I'm ready for him. He slapped his pocket. I carry a gun. Little Willie here travels round with me everywhere. He produced a murderous-looking automatic and tapped it affectionately before returning it to his home. But he won't be needed this trip. There's nobody to put Mr. Brown wise. The lawyer shrugged his shoulders. There was nobody to put Mr. Brown wise to the fact that Mrs. Vandermeyer meant to betray him. Nevertheless, Mrs. Vandermeyer died without speaking. Julius was silenced for once, and Sir James added on a lighter note, I only want to put you on your guard. Goodbye and good luck. Take no unnecessary risk once the papers are in your hands. If there is any reason to believe that you have been shadowed, destroy them at once. Good luck to you. The game is in your hands now. He shook hands with them both. 10 minutes later, the two young men were seated in a first-class carriage en route for Chester. For a long time, neither of them spoke. When at length Julius broke the silence, it was with a totally unexpected remark. "Say," he observed thoughtfully, "did you ever make a darn fool of yourself over a girl's face?" Tommy, after a moment's astonishment, searched his mind. "Can't say I have," he replied at last. "Not that I can recollect anyway." "Why?" "Because for the last 2 months I've been making a sentimental idiot of myself over Jane. First moment I clapped eyes on her photograph, my heart did all the usual stunts you read about in novels. I guess I'm ashamed to admit it, but I came over here determined to find her and fix it all up and take her back as Mrs. Julius P. Hershmeyer." "Oh," said Tommy, amazed. Julius uncrossed his legs brusquely and continued. "Just shows what an almighty fool a man can make of himself. One look at the girl in the flesh, and I was cured." Feeling more tongue-tied than ever, Tommy ejaculated, "Oh," again. "No disparagement to Jane, mind you," continued the other. "She's a real nice girl, and some fellow will fall in love with her right away." "I thought her a very good-looking girl," said Tommy, finding his tongue. "Sure she is, but she's not like her photo one bit." "At least, I suppose she is in a way. Must be, because I recognized her right off. If I'd seen her in a crowd, I'd have said, 'There's a girl whose face I know,' right away without any hesitation. But there was something about that photo." Julius shook his head and heaved a sigh. "I guess romance is a mighty queer thing." "It must be," said Tommy coldly. "If you can come over here in love with one girl and propose to another within a fortnight." Julius had the grace to look discomposed. "Well, you see, I'd got a sort of tired feeling that I'd never find Jane, and that it was all a plump foolishness anyway. And then, oh well, the French, for instance, are much more sensible in the way they look at things. They keep romance and marriage apart." Tommy flushed. "Well, I'm damned if that—" Julius hastened to interrupt. "Say now, don't be hasty. I don't mean what you mean. I take it Americans have a higher opinion of morality than you have even. What I meant was that the French set about marriage in a business-like way. Find two people who are suited to one another, look after the money affairs, and see the whole thing practically and in a business-like spirit." "If you ask me," said Tommy, "we're all too darn business-like nowadays. We're always saying, 'Will it pay?' The men are bad enough and the girls are worse." "Cool down, son. Don't get so heated." "I feel heated," said Tommy. Julius looked at him and judged it wise to say no more. However, Tommy had plenty of time to cool down before they reached Holyhead, and the cheerful grin had returned to his countenance as they alighted at their destination. After consultation and with the aid of a road map, they were fairly well agreed as to direction, so were able to hire a taxi, without more ado and drive out on the road leading to Tragdor Bay. They instructed the man to go slowly and watch narrowly so as not to miss the path. They came to it not long after leaving the town, and Tommy stopped the car promptly, asked in a casual tone whether the path led down to the sea, and hearing it did, paid off the man in handsome style. A moment later, the taxi was slowly chugging back to Holyhead. Tommy and Julius watched it out of sight, and then turned to the narrow path. "It's the right one, I suppose?" asked Tommy doubtfully. "There must be simply heaps along here." "Sure it is. Look at the gorse. Remember what Jane said?" Tommy looked at the swelling hedges of golden blossom which bordered the path on either side and was convinced. They went down in a single file, Julius leading. Twice Tommy turned his head uneasily. Julius looked back. "What is it?" "I don't know. I've got the wind up somehow. Keep fancying there's someone following us." "Can't be," said Julius positively. "We'd see them." Tommy had to admit that this was true. Nevertheless, his sense of uneasiness deepened. In spite of himself, he believed in the omniscience of the enemy. "I rather wish that fellow would come along," said Julius. He patted his pocket. "Little William here is just aching for exercise." "Do you always carry it with you?" inquired Tommy with burning curiosity. "Most always. I guess you never know what might turn up." Tommy kept a respectful silence. He was impressed by little William. It seemed to remove the menace of Mr. Brown farther away. The path was now running along the side of the cliff parallel to the sea. Suddenly, Julius came to such an abrupt halt that Tommy cannoned into him. "What's up?" he inquired. "Look there. If that doesn't beat the band." Tommy looked. Standing out, half obstructing the path, was a huge boulder which certainly bore a fanciful resemblance to a begging terrier. "Well," said Tommy, refusing to share Julius' emotion, "it's what we expected to see, isn't it?" Julius looked at him sadly and shook his head. "British phlegm. Sure, we expected it, but it kind of rattles me all the same to see it sitting there just where we expected to find it." Tommy, whose calm was perhaps more assumed than natural, moved his feet impatiently. "Push on. What about the hole?" They scanned the cliffside narrowly. Tommy heard him saying idiotically, "The gorse won't be there after all these years." And Julius replied solemnly, "I guess you're right." Tommy suddenly pointed with a shaking hand. "What about that crevice there?" Julius replied in an awe-stricken voice, "That's it, for sure." They looked at each other. "When I was in France," said Tommy reminiscently, "whenever my batman failed to call me, he always said that he had come over queer. I never believed it. But whether he felt it or not, there is such a sensation. I've got it now, badly." He looked to the rock with a kind of agonized passion. "Damn it," he cried, "it's impossible. 5 years, think of it. Birds nesting, boys, picnic parties, thousands of people passing. It can't be there. It's 100 to 1 against it being there. It's against all reason." Indeed, he felt it to be impossible, more perhaps because he could not believe in his own success where so many others had failed. The thing was too easy, therefore it could not be. the hole would be empty. Julius looked at him with a widening smile. I guess you're rattled now, all right, he drawled with some enjoyment. Well, here goes. He thrust his hand into the crevice and made a slight grimace. It's a tight fit. Jane's hand must be a few sizes smaller than mine. I don't feel anything. No, say, what's this? Gee whiz. And with a flourish, he waved aloft a small discoloured packet. It's the goods, all right, sewn up in oilskin. Hold it while I get my penknife. The unbelievable had happened. Tommy held the precious packet tenderly between his hands. They had succeeded. It's queer, he murmured idly. You'd think the stitches would have rotted. They look just as good as new. Join me. Do join me. Join me for the next video of Secret Adversary to find out whether the documents are indeed the original or not. Join me for the next video of Secret Adversary. Look forward to seeing you then. Next video. See you then. Bye.